Today is December 3rd, 2009. Good evening. I'm Eric Hackley, and this is Hackonomics. Tonight is a live call-in show, and the number will be on the screen because we want you to participate in tonight's dialogue. There may soon be a dump, recycling facility, whatever you want to call it, on Pontiac Street, and a lot of people didn't know about this until it was all said and done. And we're going to talk about that during the whole show here, and to put light on this whole subject of the proposed Pontiac Street dump is Rick Stevenson, the Wayne Township trustee. Rick, welcome back to the show here.
Thank you.
And I know that this issue has had you going a whole lot because, 3 weeks ago we were over at Jerusalem Baptist Church, and how many folks showed up over there?
There was approximately estimated better than 300 people that showed up over there on November the 17th.
Okay, now at that time, I was vaguely familiar with the issue, but the way the whole thing transpired, it really put things in perspective. And before we get started, I want to show a video clip that really, what I think is puts a frame around it. And if that clip is ready to go ahead and run that. Then we're going to come back here and talk with Richard Stevenson and our audience here.
What it is we're going to be, what it is we're going to do there, and to answer your questions. So the first part of your question is, let me, just a word, if I can, just to maybe correct a misperception, or to state something that I don't think is accurate. We are not a dump. We come by our facility. We poured asphalt everywhere. I mean, there's virtually no bare ground there where we would dump and bury anything. Our activities will take place inside. It is not a dump. It is a transfer and recycling facility with the emphasis on recycling. Now, how did we get to where we are? Why are we on Pontiac Street on the south side of Fort Wayne? Direct answer to your direct question. Why are where we are as opposed to north, west, or why are where we are? Number one, that is a very central location to the city of Fort Wayne. We're literally less than 2 miles from the center of our city. Okay, so number one, central location was important to us in terms of identifying the location for the facility. We had the idea, the transfer station and recycling station we're building are very common in other communities, but there aren't any in Fort Wayne. Indianapolis has 7 of them. There's one in Indianapolis that's a half a mile or even a quarter of a mile from the zoo in Indianapolis. Okay, there's...
The first situation was not necessarily true. We don't know why they chose that, but we know that our community, the property value is a and I dare any of you to read Serial Report. It's spelled C-E-R-R-E-L-L. Read it, and you'll find in 1984, California Waste Management Commission Board contracted
Okay, we're back live again, and my guest is Richard Stevenson. And Rick, you know, that was a very moving and powerful commentary that you made there. And, you know, what really piqued my curiosity is when, I forgot the guy's name, but when he said that he's going to clear up the misperceptions, he did that very well. When he compared Indianapolis and how this recycling center is next to a zoo. And people were, and you know, around me were looking at each other, a zoo. And I noticed that that's when you took the microphone from him. Bring us up to date on just how that transpired and if those comments struck a nerve with you.
Thank you for the opportunity to clear up some things on this, because many of my followers, they view me as a real nice and calm and collected guy, and they thought I was out of control. But I want you to know that I was not out of control. We were scheduled for allotted time, and the allotted time was just about far spent, and we thought it was necessary that we would not allow the owners, the principal owners, to further deceive the people anymore. So it was time for us to stand up, and it just happened to be right after he used that contrast of a zoo versus our community. I couldn't say for sure if he chose to do that purposely or if it was just a slip of the tongue. That doesn't bother me so much. What bothers me is the whole issue itself, garbage in a residential area. Not because it's a black residential area, but because it's a residential area. And that's the whole issue, you know, and that's what we're here about. And we wanted to get the truth out to the people. And it was geared to advise the people. It was not geared so that the owners would have a stage so that they could promote, and I say deceiving the people further, that it's going to be about a transfer station. And as you well know, the subject is transfer station versus dump. And my visitations and so forth, I'm not using my words, but I'm using the words of managers of both of those transfer sites. They said, well, you call it what you want. It's still a dump because you're dumping garbage into a facility, not only into a facility, but into a residential area.
But you know something, the deeper I got into the issue, the more interesting it became, because yes, the issue is about a dump versus a transfer station, but when you spelled out the surreal report,
Yes.
and said, I dare you to read it, and of course that's my cue,
Yes.
to go ahead and read it, and I thought it was very interesting, and then I read where some of the blogs said that you were grandstanding on the issue because this was written in 1984 in California, and it wasn't pertinent to here. But when I read that, I said, oh, you know, I said, this is pertinent, and that it really laid out, I was talking, go
Eric,
ahead.
not to interrupt you, but I had to there, because so often you hear comments on blogs or for, and if you listen to those blogs, it will really blow your mind, because they're still of the mindset back in the early 1700s when it was against the law for black folks to be able to read and write.
And be president.
And be president. But today, because a black man can go and research and come up with factual information, sometimes knowledge is powerful, and if it's in the wrong hands, it can be very, very dangerous. And so for that reason, we try to be as diplomatic as possible. However, but when you see the power play and it's on innocent, poor folks that don't have the voice, it's time for someone to stand up and cry bloody murder. And I remind you, better than 3 years ago when this same trustee stood up for rats and roaches in St. Liver apartment. So for people didn't say we were grandstanding because it was in a white area. But they asked this same trustee, are you gonna close down the St. Liver apartment? And my response was, no, that's not my job. I'm not code enforcement officer, but I want you to be on record, and I still say to you, the public today, on record, whenever poor people are mistreated, whether it's in housing, whether it's employment, whether it's in police brutality, wherever, this trustee is going to have something to say. And that's what it's all about, that the voice of the disenfranchised being heard. And that you heard them the other night when 300 say we didn't know about garbage coming in our community because it went over the radar.